Welcome to another solo episode of the Dope Designer Club. In this episode, I'm going to ramble on some of my recent travel experiences, what I've been up to this summer, what new projects we're working on, and some of the new guests and episodes and events that we're planning. I also want to take this opportunity to talk about some books that left an impact on me this summer, and a few things that have been kind of on my mind with sustainability and in particular, radical sustainability. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to talk about is I've been doing some traveling over the summer. The first part of the summer I was here, I was working, but then the way I travel is like I make these plans 2 weeks in advance. And this time I knew I wanted to go to Croatia and visit family there. My father is from Croatia and my mother is from Serbia. So I haven't gone to Croatia a lot in my life. I went there when I was little, and then last year I went there and visited some family. And these sort of connections are very important to me. The reason I mention this is because I think that this podcast is also about connecting and stepping out of our boxes and having sort of memorable experiences with others. And sometimes you actually have to travel across the world to make that happen. But in this instance, it was wonderful because I was in Croatia earlier this year in May on the unfortunate occasion of my grandmother's funeral. And something happened to me there where I felt like I was driving for hours, from the small airport into, where she's from and where she was put to rest. And I felt like I was kind of driving in this wilderness, but like I felt like I was driving back to myself. And so this summer was an opportunity for me to spend more time there. And it happened again. So I drove for hours and hours. And I have to say, I went with a friend of mine, Jasmine, who's from LA. And it was still kind of an LA vibe just because, we were talking in English and it was interesting to also see it through her eyes. But then as we're driving and immersing ourselves in this wonderful, wonderful landscape and arriving in Pula and being in the sea, there was something very maternal about all of this, something about this landscape. And for me, I think it had to do with going back to my roots because, my father is from there. And so therefore I'm from there. I'm getting a little emotional. So that was a very kind of powerful experience for me. I mean, we stayed in a beautiful place. It was a Hotel Brioni, and it's beautifully sited, and the architecture, it had this really cool, I think the pool is like 60 meters long or something. It was just awesome. And just being in this wonderfully designed space too, was also important. I think sometimes travel, especially for designers, can be used to, see some other ideas, what people are doing differently. And so this was also that for me. So that's a little bit about my travels. Then I went to Serbia, of course, and that was wonderful too. I love being in my home city. Belgrade is a beautiful city. It's situated on the confluence of two rivers. It's an ancient place. It's a very urban place, but also a very intimate place. And one of the highlights, I like to stay, I actually stay in a hotel there, which is like weird because it's like where I'm from, but my mom doesn't live there anymore. But I do stay at the same neighborhood where I spent a lot of my youth in. So that's also kind of nice. And Belgrade, it just has like all these like little streets and like what was really cool. And I don't know if there's a way for us to incorporate this. I took a little video, like you're just walking in these streets and you hear the violin. And it's like this beautiful, beautiful music, and you get closer, and of course it's like a violinist just like playing his thing just because. So there's a lot of culture. It's very chill. The food is amazing. It was a eat, pray, love sort of experience, especially, you know, having Jasmine there. She's like totally in this like eat, pray, love phase. And so it was kind of, that was the vibe. And then we got back here, and then I went to Chicago where my brother lives, and we celebrated his birthday, and now I'm back and I'm super excited to jump into these new projects and episodes and share some of the insights of some great guests that we have lined up. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But now I want to talk about books. So my summer reading was quite intensive. I want to go over some books that I loved reading this summer that really opened my mind and opened my world. So let's get started with that. So the first book that I'd like to cover is Women Who Run with the Wolves. So not to make this podcast like about women or women empowerment, but I am a woman. And this is such a wonderful, wonderful read. I feel like for me, it's a bit of, again, I guess this, well, I'm really into psychology, but I'm also really into symbols. And the subtitle of this book is Myths and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. So it goes really deep into the psyche of, you know, us as women, and it invites us to kind of tap into that power. What's great about this book is that it covers a lot of stories that we already know, but through maybe a different lens, and some that maybe we don't know. And it's full of symbols and lessons. And some of these lessons are really deep, and this book takes a while. So I actually haven't really completely gone through it, but it's already leaving such a big impact on me. And in Women Who Run with the Wolves, I think, you know, for women, but also men, to understand women, you know, you'll get a lot of cool lessons. So that's this one. The next one I'd like to cover is Leadership and the New Science, Discovering Order in a Chaotic World. When I started reading this, I thought this would be more like a management book. And I thought it would be, you know, more about helping me, you know, organize my thoughts, be more productive, be a better manager. But it does that, but it introduces it through a totally different lens, and it's the new science. One of the top, I guess, highlights for me is learning about these fields. And sometimes now I use the word field, like, are you in that field? Where, you know, we're not just defined as individuals, but more as basically the relationships that we have. And that happens even on a subatomic level between particles. Particles in themselves don't even have an identity without their relationship to other particles. And I find that to be fascinating, both in terms of physics. We just talked about physics before we started taping, but also on this interpersonal level. So I love that lesson from this book. Another book that's totally different that I love, it's a series of books, and it's poetry. I don't really read a lot of fiction. I read nonfiction, but I also like poetry, and I love quotes also. So in this series, which is edited by Allie Esiri, it's a series of poems for every season, and I think that's really lovely. So there's a poem for every day, for every season. And in this one, so there's autumn, there's summer, there's spring and winter. In this one in particular, I loved one specific poem, and I'll read it to you in a second. But it's such a wonderful series because it not only touches on the days and seasons, but it's a wonderful way to discover poetry from many different authors that you haven't necessarily studied or come across earlier. And I think poetry can sometimes be very insightful and philosophical and helpful in just our personal growth. So I'm going to read a poem. It's called Love After Love. by Derek Walcott. And it's lovely because it tells you about these wonderful writers. The time will come when, with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door, in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome and say, "Sit here, eat." You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored for another, who knows you by heart. Take down the love letters from the bookshelf, the photographs, the desperate notes. Peel your own image from the mirror. Sit, feast on your life. I just love this poem so much. And what's lovely about this is that my daughter started reading them as well. So I'm really into this. The poem to me basically just means return to yourself. There's so much wealth and richness there. So that's this wonderful series. 180. I love this book, Objective Secure. It's by Nick Lavery. And it's, when I got this book was a gift. It didn't seem like, a book that, I would like, although I love, kind of just the military ethos, I guess. But it's such a wonderful book because it's very encouraging. So whatever goal you have, if this guy was able to do it, so can you. And what's lovely about it is that when you read this, it's very palatable. Like he speaks in very concrete, relatable terms, even though his life is probably very extreme and he's definitely an adrenaline junkie. But it's wonderful. One, it's practical. I love, when people are practical and tell you exactly how to do things. But it's also very philosophical. And to me, this is the modern Stoic approach. And I love this book, and I'm very grateful for receiving this book. Speaking of Stoicism, this book is Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. It's not necessarily something that you read as a novel, but I think having this beside your bed and reading it occasionally is helpful to me, I guess. I definitely align with this kind of thinking. I also think that certain wisdom is timeless, and I love using timeless. Timeless is like such a word, for me. It's like, I think every week I use it 10 times at least. So timelessness comes from this ancient, I think, knowledge, and I think it's just as relevant today as it was when it was written. And, I can get into Stoicism, but basically, whatever your life circumstances, you have to find virtue in it and enjoy it and just go for it, it's a powerful, powerful book. Another wonderful gift of a book is Victor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning. I only read this recently, and it's life-changing. It's another simple book. It, talks about the Holocaust, but I don't know that the Holocaust it's maybe the circumstances, but it's a much deeper book. And it's applicable to anybody. And it's a whole philosophy and psychology to it. And again, I can go back to Stoicism, but it's written to through a more contemporary lens, and it's very encouraging. It's optimistic, and it's not just about survival, but also thriving and finding meaning in whatever life sort of throws at you. So another great read. And my last book that I want to cover is The Creative Act. By Rick Ruben. Rick Ruben is a great thought leader, I think, especially for creatives. And for this, I also want to just read an excerpt and just give you a flavor of just how wonderful it is. Our work embodies a higher purpose. Whether we know it or not, we're a conduit for the universe. material is allowed through us. If we are a clear channel, our intention reflects the intention of the cosmos. So I leave you with that. These are some wonderful reads that you can pick up and and grow. Now, I would love to talk about some of our upcoming projects and events. So other than this solo episode, I've lined up a bunch of really cool, interesting, dope designer people that I've, some that I've known for years, some I've met recently, and I'm really inspired by their work and their thoughts. And I want to say that, when I started this podcast, this was actually selfishly a vehicle for me to also expand my horizons and get out of my own little box. And through that, I wanted to connect with people that are doing different kinds of things and doing interesting projects, which I think there are so many, especially here in LA. And some of these people, like I just met this wonderful woman who's a sex therapist, like she helps people, with their relationships and whatever their sexual issues. But I think that's also very important creative work. Another upcoming guest that I want to introduce in advance is my friend Jasmine that I just went on this crazy journey with, who works in women's health, which I think is a great, wonderful field, but she approaches it through, I think, a very special, even spiritual lens. And I really appreciate that about her. I also want to talk about like all these other, people. And I'm hoping actually that one of our guests is a very renowned industrial designer. So we're working on that. And I'm super excited about the lineup, just the lineup of the guests that we have coming. In addition to that, I want to go back also to, we spent some time earlier this year filming these courses and educational content that I'm launching through, a similar platform. So that's also been a bit of a journey. And in addition to that, we're planning in-person live events that we're inviting you to. And these events we're partnering with, we had one already at the Herman Miller showroom earlier this year. And we're hoping to do them in other venues as well. And for that, we're partnering with some other collaborators, including some prominent names in the fitness world. And, it's, again, expanding from just architecture and design. We live in a world that's very diverse and rich, and we want to connect with you and have you also connect with others. And what better way to do that than in person? Lastly, I have to talk about radical environmentalism and sustainability. This summer, this is something that I've been thinking about, but also, I've been invited to speak about it by a nonprofit. And I think it's a part of my purpose here. Four Oceans is an organization that promotes sustainability for oceans, related to oceans primarily. And this is something that I've been thinking about for the last few months, but also more recently, this summer in LA, we've experienced some issues with especially the health of our oceans. And there's been heightened bacteria levels, and there has been some new lawsuits that have come up with that. And the city has been fined millions of dollars for sewage spills that happened, years ago, and it's happening again, and it affects everybody. You can't take your kid to the beach, in LA, and to me that's just atrocious. And I feel like this political anger, like slightly bubbling up in me, and I feel that somebody should be really responsible for this. But Furthermore, coming back from Serbia, Serbia also is in the midst of like a huge environmental crisis, and it's very political. It has to do with lithium mining in a very beautiful area, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people there have got up on their feet and are having massive demonstrations and demanding that this stops. And certain politicians that are involved with this have been informally charged of very serious crimes in these kinds of situations. But I'm not a commentator or anything. But to me, what this means is that our environment is under attack, not metaphorically, but literally. And I think that we all have the power to do something about it and say something about it. And this is something that I'm going to be covering more in some of my articles and some of my other work. I think sustainability has always been a part of my work. Early in my career, I've been into LEED and all these other things, but I think also that we have a much bigger and broader responsibility as individuals, as consumers, as citizens, to really, take action in some of these things and talk about them and bring them to light in whatever way we can. And so that's something that I had to cover. And I guess I leave you with that. So I'm excited. Let's go. Let's get this season rolling. Come to our events. Follow our educational content. Let's grow and learn and connect. So see you in the next episode. Thank you.